This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
You are what you watch. Hello, welcome to Talk to Harry. Yes, my name's Harry Tambuatco. And yes, I'm talking to you, but it's not like I'm talking down to you. Ladies and gentlemen, let's look at what's going on. Let's see, Hong Kong. It was unimaginable what happened over the weekend, wherein the Hong Kongers are all out. Now they know what people power is like. What strikes me is when exactly did critical mass happen? Was it the 17-year-old boy who was incarcerated on Friday, released last night? Was it the bombing that aggravated the protesters on the street? Was it really the issue of China coming across saying, we will vent all your nominations before you choose your country leader? Or is it really just the people are really becoming body politic and defending and fighting for their democracy? But what else is democracy? It's a freedom you and I take for granted. The politics are always there. The rich just become richer. It's called disgustingly rich. The middle class and the poor. Oh yes, the trickle-down effect. Great Hong Kong, first-class Hong Kong. But they live in hovels, little shoe boxes. And they ride these trains that move from one place to another to work for fees which may seem higher than what we have, but with food and everything else just as expensive. Now, we in the Philippines, we have had the opportunity for the world perception to come across Philippines the Great, and rightfully so. With the GDP, with the progress we are all experiencing, or better yet, reading about, the rich are becoming disgustingly richer, the middle class and the poor, or maybe the lower rich, are reeling from high prices, be it for garlic, rice, etc. Government says, well, there is normalization of price. We hear about it, we read about it, but can't seem to buy it at normal prices. Real estate keeps going up. Wow, fantastic Makati, fantastic cities. The municipalities all around the whole country suffers, be it for poor services or no services. Now, whether we go through with this or not, or how we go about this, ladies and gentlemen, we've chosen today's topic to be democracy in peril. Exactly what that really means. Well, alam mo, hindi pwedeng basta magbibira lang eh, although GNN is always known to be so adverse to government. It's not correct. Maybe that statement should be corrected. We are talking about the issues, the real issues that seem to come out. With us, we have Rick Ramos, a columnist at the Manila Times, and one of the GNN hosts. Now, you know, the difference with hosting is you're always the one doing the talking, guiding it, and then holding back, and not really being able to super discuss in detail the issues at hand. We've got Eric Espina, who's a columnist with the Manila Bulletin. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Eric, for a change, hindi ka nag-host. Kasi you're always leading everybody, controlling it, where it's going. Di ba? You know what hosting is like.
Yeah.
Di ba? Iba yung, you can really break the issues apart and say what you really feel and what the way you see it.
Correct.
I read it in your columns. I read it in yours too. Would you say you're both anti-government?
Well, I would not say I'm anti-government. I would say I am pro-Filipino people.
So pro-Filipino, anti-Pinoy.
Pro-Filipino.
Ikaw, Eric.
I think anti-government is actually a little too sweeping.
Well, anti this administration.
Well, let's just put it this way. There are certain policies which I see should not be pursued, and therefore certain reforms should be initiated when it comes to certain decisions made by the palace.
Then why are we being perceived, especially in GNN, and both of you, I'm sure, with your columns, weekly columns, because I follow it. Why is the perception we're anti-Pinoy, anti-government, anti this administration?
Actually, we occupy a very small niche in terms of providing the narrative to telling the truth, because when you look at the major TV stations, you have a lot of big business that support it. And these big businesses, which own much of the major television networks, also control in some form or the other already publications, major publications. Now one can
So
only...
you're saying Channel 2, Channel 7, Channel 5 are biased and
they are-
incompetent and should stop doing news?
If Channel 4 is limited by government in terms of what they can speak and report about, the other commercial stations are also limited as to what they can report vis-a-vis their owners.
But Philip Chen here in GNN is not exactly a small millionaire. He's quite a tycoon in his own right.
Precisely. That's the reason why there is a provision in the Constitution that certain monopolies in media, in radio and publications have to be regulated. Unfortunately, our Congress and our Senate seem to be bamboozled by the major networks, because the bigger they get in terms of accumulating, being in bed with radio, television, etc., the politician seems to take 2-3 steps backwards, because they're always looking forward to, losing this kind of publicity when election time comes.
You agree with that, Rick?
Which part?
Well, about big media being not, self-restrained to a certain extent, biased because of specific interests, because of its proprietors, owners, and bamboozling, the newsmakers supposed to be.
Yeah, definitely the ownership of mass media, definitely they would have a vested interest and influence what comes out in the news.
But you write very openly at Manila Times. You're saying Dante Ang is very open.
Well,
Or he's anti-Pinoy.
well, we would be more of the exception, because the others, more of the national newspapers with the bigger circulation, you can see the slant in the news and how but they also, in fairness to them, they also try to be objective.
Eric gets away with it. With the Manila Bulletin, it's supposed to be very conservative. He
Yeah,
gets away with it. You're the only one there in that newspaper.
I noticed the Manila Bulletin lately. I'm surprised actually when I saw on the front page about Abad, no? And that.
Patay na kasi yung matanda. Wala na yung matanda.
I can understand that.
Iba na.
Yeah.
He was really controlling and
Yes.
conservative. Now, we're talking perception. Malacanang does the same thing. It railroads PR. It railroads facts, be it on TV, on print, on radio, using the government stations, Channel 4, the radio stations, and its pressure on businessmen, on those who own these big major dailies, di ba?
Yeah.
Now, they push ideas. They push their own figures. They push their own statistics. They push their own surveys. Now, is that telling the truth? Is that what they're doing? Isn't that what the others are doing as well? Is this what you call media, the fourth estate? Is this what you call the open field fight of war to establish the true public opinion or to sway public opinion? Di ba ginagawa din ng Malacanang yan?
Actually, the mental dishonesty of the Aquino administration is really amazing.
You said that. Mental dishonesty. I didn't say it. Ladies and gentlemen, Rick Ramos said that. Okay, go ahead.
In fact, what makes the Aquino administration worse than its predecessor is the hypocrisy of it all, because they try to project an image. Like even with the World Economic Forum, they were talking about reforms. When President Aquino went to Europe, he was talking about reforms. But as I wrote in my column, what actually are these reforms? It seems to be a state secret that nobody knows about.
It's like the DAP until now.
Yeah,
Taguan.
like speaking of the DAP, okay. The DAP existed since October 2011. I have written a lot of columns on DAP
I've
and
read.
PDAP, okay. And what happened was that it was only after the speech, the privileged speech of Senator Jinggoy Estrada,
Na lumabas.
in sometime September in 2014, I'm sorry, 13 last
yes.
year. So you're talking of 2 years later, okay, that DBM Secretary Butch Abad was forced to admit that there's a DAP, and it seemed that nobody knew about it. If I recall, even Senate President Drilon did not know about DAP.
I don't know about Drilon, but I know about the DAP, the secret.
Yeah. No, what I'm trying to say is, I even read that even the executive secretary knew that there was a DAP. So it was just kept between the budget secretary and the president.
You agree with all of this going on?
When we talk about democracy in peril, Harry, it's troublesome when TV network, a radio network, a cable network is owned by one family or several families. That should not be the case. You either own a radio component but not TV,
No.
or not cable.
Let me correct it. To my understanding, the NTC rules is if you have electronic broadcast, that means TV and radio, you can't go into print. But
Yes.
if you own a VHF, you can only own one. Right
That's as
now,
far as-
MVP owns two.
That's the
Diba?
NTC.
The
The
NTC.
Constitution says something else.
Okay.
Okay, and
I would imagine, I thought the NTC
No,
had
no.
to follow the Constitution.
during the time of my father, it was
Diba?
like that. You own a radio station, you cannot own television, or you
One or the other.
One or the other, or you can come up with
Actually,
a subsidiary.
I agree with that kasi para hindi mo makontrol public opinion.
Precisely.
That's the spirit of the law.
Or what's happening now, that one cable company seems to be gobbling up everybody else so that they can start monopolizing the rates and start increasing the rates. You cannot have that.
So let's talk about the perceptions of truth that are driven by media. Are they false? Are they real? Are they truths? I read just this morning, the World Bank promotes the austerity programs, the growth of the Philippine nation. And yet you've got the poor that keep growing and the rich getting disgustingly rich. Prices are high. I don't understand the trickle-down effects. Of course, there are none. Are there ever any in any other country where they had it? Even the CCT program. It says it worked in Brazil, it worked elsewhere. In reality, it did not, because stage 2 of CCT is to provide medium-term SME financing, so they can grow on their own. It never got out of the first stage. So is it even a good strategy? We've wasted, what, 100 billion to date or 150? The point is, when perceptions are driven, are our freedoms still the freedom we know it to be? Or are we mechanized? Are we made robots to understand what a certain thinking is supposed to be? This is the way I want you to think. You are free. In reality, you have chains, balls of chains on your feet. Are we driven like that?
I think the big difference now is that, unlike before, we are very much dependent on what we call the mainstream media, broadcast and print media. But what has become very powerful now is what we call the social media. So I think the social media now, has become a very potent, equalizer, and in fact we have seen its effects. No?
But if that being the case, Rick, why aren't we on the streets? Why aren't we like Hong Kong? Tell me the Hong Kongers are more body politic than we are. Hey, we love politics. The Filipino wants to get engaged. Or have everyone become robots? Are we telling the truth? Is Malacanang telling the truth? Is big media telling the truth? Someone has to be telling a lie because all three are not the same.
Yeah.
It's all adverse, di ba? So may nagsisinungaling. Sino nagsisinungaling? Si Pinoy?
Well, to answer your question why the Filipinos are not out in the streets,
Why?
basically there are three problems the way I analyze it. Number one, there's a great degree of ignorance among the Filipino people.
So the Filipino people are stupid.
Well, not
Ignorance,
necessarily.
ignorance in the law is inexcusable.
Yes.
In politics, it should likewise be inexcusable because it's the freedoms of everybody else that's affected.
Yeah. Well, what surprised me is that people who are employed, you're talking of professionals, and what surprised me was probably because of the nature of the work. They don't, they hardly read the newspapers, and they're not up to date with what's going on. Okay, and probably as a result of the ignorance is the indifference. I mean, the public apathy is just too much. And the reason for that, I believe, is because Filipinos do not look at themselves as stakeholders in their country. There's always the option of leaving this country as an
But the
OFW
middle-
or an immigrant.
True, but the middle class have no choice. The poor have no choice. The rich can leave, but many wish not to leave. Do you believe in that perception that we are enslaved, or the Filipino is an idiot?
You know, Harry.
I'm sorry, I come across maybe a little too strong, but you're used to me.
No, Harry, you've asked a very, very substantive question. I've wrestled with that question many times, and part of it is historical. That goes back to a long discussion that
We
starts...
can't blame Rizal. We're already putting a building behind him.
That goes back to 1521 and over maybe 100 uprisings and revolutions during our times. At the end of the day, why aren't we in the streets? It's very simple, because the Filipino, at the end of the day, does not want to confront the reality. Not because he is unaware of the reality, but because for him to confront the reality is for him to leave his family and to go to the streets and be awakened by a consciousness that has always animated his history, starting from 1521 up to 1907. And that would mean an unquiet way of living. And today, the most primary important focus of the Filipino is how to save and survive and take care of his family.
So we're with a ball of chain on our feet.
Yes, and given the circumstances, he would rather protect and survive and believe in his family.
But when family suffers, when family dies, when there's famine, when there's no more freedom on the street,
he will look for ways to make his family survive, hoping that it will get better again
a
tomorrow.
misguided resilience.
Maybe. Let's hope it will not get there. That one day, again, the Filipino is awakened, because I've always believed in this saying, ang inuugatan ng Pilipino ay dugo ng bandirigma. Huwag mo lang gigisingin, huwag mo lang pupukawin, dahil sa ngayon, ang mahalaga sa kanya ay ang kanyang pamilya. Yan lang ang tanging niyang pinaniniwalaan, yan lang ang tanging niyang pinoprotektahan. Huwag mong masyadong itulak, dahil pag itinulak mo yan...
Pero hindi ba ang pag magdidirigma, hindi ba yan sa presyo ng bigas, sa presyo ng pagkain na napakataas-taas, sa presyo ng simpleng bahay na napakamahal, napakataas, na tinataasan lahat, iniipit na sila. Hindi kaya yan ang tamang pagdidirigma.
We're waiting for that line in the sand to be made.
You know, it's interesting in Hong Kong. It was started just last Friday by these students. They stayed out. It did not matter. CNN, which is based in Hong Kong, which is quite easy for them to just sit back and watch. Oh, we've got 200-300 people. It metastasized overnight to 1,000, 2,000 people Saturday night. And come 7 o'clock Sunday morning, it reached critical mass. It was out of control. There was tens of
Hong Kong was
thousands.
expected, Harry.
Oh, was it? I didn't even realize
That's
that.
expected, because what I'm watching is how Beijing will react. Hong Kong was expected, just as the Uyghurs were expected. Do you know that there are 80,000 protests in mainland China, which is not reported? When we speak about China, we don't speak about the monolithic China. There is China from Hong Kong. There are the Uyghurs. There is Tibet, that is part of China. In short, it is a country imperiled as well. The only difference is that you've got a communist regime making use of tremendous powers to hold on to this country together.
Gentlemen, we have to take a short break. It is obvious, ladies and gentlemen, yes, democracies, not a democracy, not the Philippine democracy alone. We don't have that franchise. Democracies are in peril. Now, there are people who act about it, who act ahead of time, rather than wake up one day and the ball of chain is now not on one leg but both. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us and let's see if there's even a thought, a way, an idea to unchain this persecution. We'll be right back.